Jason stood tall at the edge of the grand hall, watching the lavish celebrations unfold before him. The atmosphere was electric with music, laughter, and the bright lights of alien technology. He was in the heart of the alien kingdom, surrounded by beings from all over the galaxy. The queen, Shira, sat upon her throne, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Her beauty was otherworldly, her gaze calm and filled with quiet authority. Jason had been assigned to protect her, a simple human soldier in a world of advanced beings. He never imagined he would be here, in the middle of such a lavish affair, but his mission was clear: protect the queen at all costs. She was the key to an important alliance between her people and humanity, and the stakes were high. Jason had trained for years, honing his skills as a warrior, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. The alien ambassadors mingled in the grand hall, their conversations flowing like a river of strange languages. Jason kept his focus, his eyes scanning the crowd for any signs of danger. It wasn't just a guard, it was the queen's protector, the one who had sworn to keep her safe from harm. His duty was clear, but nothing in his training had taught him how to react when danger came without warning. A sudden movement caught his eye. A figure, cloaked in shadows, darted toward the queen with incredible speed.
Oh.
Jason's heart skipped a beat. He instinctively took a step forward, his body responding before his mind could process what was happening. The crowd was too distracted to notice the danger. The assassin, a skilled figure hidden in plain sight, pulled back his bow and aimed. Jason's eyes locked on the glowing tip of the poisoned arrow, moving with terrifying precision toward the queen. Time seemed to slow down. Without thinking, Jason pushed through the crowd. His legs moved before he could stop them. He lunged forward, throwing himself into the path of the arrow. His body collided with the force of the impact as the sharp tip embedded itself into his side. A searing pain shot through his body, and his vision blurred. The hall erupted in chaos. Screams filled the air, but Jason couldn't hear them. All he could focus on was the sharp, burning pain in his chest. He stumbled, barely managing to keep his balance as he fell to the floor. The poison was spreading quickly, and he knew there was little time left. Through the haze of pain, Jason saw the queen's face. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she looked as if the world had stopped moving. The music, the laughter, the people, everything became distant, replaced by the haunting image of her stunned expression. "No, Shira!" cried, her voice filled with both disbelief and desperation. She rushed to his side, kneeling beside him. The warmth of her hand on his was the only thing that brought him any comfort. You saved me," Shira whispered, her voice breaking. Her delicate fingers touched his wound, but it was clear she was helpless. The poison was too fast, too strong. Jason could feel the darkness creeping at the edges of his consciousness. His body was shutting down. As the crowd moved in, the queen's personal healers arrived. They worked quickly, but Jason could see the worry in their eyes. None of them could fix what had been done in those precious moments. The poison was designed to kill within minutes. There was no time. But Shira wouldn't accept it. "Cannot die," she said, her voice fierce, a tone Jason had never heard from her before. The queen's eyes were filled with something stronger. Then just command something much deeper, something Jason couldn't quite place. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a person, a woman who seemed truly afraid of losing him. As Jason lay there, barely clinging to life, he saw her bend over him. Her breath was shallow, and there was an urgency in her eyes that he had never seen before. "I will not let you die," she said, her words filled with such sincerity that they reached into his very soul. "You have saved my life, and I will repay. You have my word." Jason tried to speak, but his breath was labored. He wanted to tell her it wasn't necessary, that he didn't expect anything in return, but the words wouldn't come. His vision dimmed, and everything started to fade away. The last thing he saw was her face, pale and full of concern, before the darkness took him completely. Jason's world was dark. What seemed like an eternity, he felt weightless, drifting in a void of nothingness. Time was a blur, and his body felt distant, as though it was no longer his own. Then, slowly, warmth began to return, filling him. From the inside out, he could feel the familiar pull of consciousness trying to reach him, but everything was heavy. It felt like he was sinking into the ground, unable to escape. Finally, his eyes flickered open. The light was bright, too bright. At first, but as his vision adjusted, he saw the intricate symbols on the walls of the room. The air smelled of strange sweet herbs, and the faint sound of quiet chanting filled the space. Jason was lying on a soft alien bed, his body still aching from the poison. His thoughts were muddled, and the pain seemed to be lingering, though. Not as sharp as before. At first, Jason didn't understand what was happening. His mind was still foggy, and he couldn't remember what had brought him to this point. But then it hit him, the arrow, the poison, the sacrifice. His eyes widened, and panic started to settle in. He tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. His movements were slow, sluggish. But before he could try again, a soft voice stopped him. "Rest, soldier. You are safe now." Jason turned his head toward the voice and saw Her Queen Shira standing by his side. Her usual royal robes were replaced with something simpler, but her presence was still commanding. Her eyes, usually filled with calculated wisdom, were now filled with a deep concern. "Your healing is complete, but your body needs time to adjust," Shira continued, her voice calm yet full of emotion. "The poison was powerful, but you are strong. I made sure to keep you alive." Jason tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. His words stuck in his mouth. He cleared his throat and forced himself to speak. What happened?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You were saved," Shira said, her eyes softening. She reached out and placed a hand on his, her touch gentle yet firm. "I ordered my best healers to work on you. They performed the healing ritual, but even they could not fully understand the poison that had entered your body. It was beyond anything we had seen before." Jason's mind raced as the events of the past few hours came flooding back. The assassin, the arrow, his leap to protect her, the pain, his sacrifice. I saved you," Jason said, his voice weak but determined. "I took the arrow for you." Shira nodded solemnly, her gaze never leaving him. "And I am forever in your debt." Jason was silent for a moment, trying to process everything. He had always thought of himself as just a soldier, someone who followed orders without question. But in this moment, he had done something far greater than he had ever expected. He had protected someone important, someone who was not just a queen, but a living, breathing person. And now, here he was, in her care, alive, but not unscathed. "There is no need for debt between us," Jason replied softly. "It was my duty. It's what I was trained to do, to protect." Shira's gaze softened even more, but there was something else in her eyes now, something deeper. "I know you did it out of duty," she said quietly. "But I also know that you did it out of something more, something that goes beyond duty." Jason looked at her, confused. What did she mean by that? Shira took a step closer, her presence calming the tension in the room. "In our culture," she continued, "a life given for another must be honored. It is a sacred bond. In some places, this bond is honored through a union, a marriage." Jason's heart skipped a beat. His mind was still foggy, and the weight of her words hit him hard. "What? ... What do you mean?" he asked. Shira didn't answer immediately. Instead, she moved to the side of the room, where a large ceremonial stone lay, glowing softly in the dim light. "In my kingdom," she explained, "if one person saves another's life, the saved person must offer their hand in marriage as a form of gratitude, a vow to stand together, to protect each other. This is how we honor the sacred bond." Jason blinked, struggling to understand. "You mean ... You want me to marry you?" Shira's gaze met his again, her expression unreadable. "Yes, I am offering you my hand in marriage." Jason was speechless. He had expected many things to happen after his act of bravery, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He had known their species were different, that their customs were unlike anything he had experienced before. But he hadn't expected something so monumental, so personal, to come from his choice to protect her. "I don't know what to say," Jason said, his voice low. "I never thought... Shira smiled gently. "There is no need for words, Jason. I know this is unexpected. But know this, our bond, what you have done for me. It is not something that can be ignored. You saved my life, and in return, I offer you my hand." Jason's thoughts were a whirlwind. He wasn't sure if he should be flattered, confused, or worried. A marriage? Political bond? Or was there something more behind Shira's offer? He looked at her closely, studying her face for any sign of jest. But there was none. She was serious. Her eyes were filled with something that Jason couldn't quite read. But it was their depth that went beyond politics, beyond duty. I don't understand," he said quietly. "What do you expect from me?" "I expect nothing but your answer," Shira said. "It is not something I demand. It is a choice I offer. The decision is yours." Jason closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about the weight of her words. He had saved her life without thinking of the consequences. But now, the consequences were real, and they weren't simple. This was more than just a debt. It was a bond that would tie them together forever. As he opened his eyes again, Jason found himself looking into Shira's calm, unwavering gaze. His thoughts were still clouded, but something deep within him told him that this was not the end of his journey, it was just the beginning. The days that followed Jason's healing were difficult. His body was stronger now, but his mind was still clouded with doubt. He had done something unimaginable, something heroic, but the consequences of his actions lingered, and they were not simple. Every time he looked at Queen Shira, the words she had spoken replayed in his mind. "I offer you my hand in marriage." She had said it with such sincerity, such seriousness, that Jason couldn't deny the weight of it. But what did it mean for him? What did it mean for his life? His future? Jason wasn't prepared for this. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. He'd been trained to fight, to protect, not to navigate complex political or emotional landscapes. Now, after his leap to save Shira, he found himself tangled in something far greater than anything he had ever trained for. He spent most of his time in his quarters, his thoughts, a storm of confusion. The Queen's offer had made sense to him in the beginning after all. It was part of her culture, part of their traditions. She was the ruler of an entire kingdom, and her gratitude was bound by custom. But the more he thought about it, the more complicated it became. Did she really want him as her husband? Was it truly about the bond between them, or was it just an extension of duty and gratitude? Could he accept such a life with someone who had so much power, so much responsibility? Every time he saw her, he was struck by her calm strength. Shira was not like any queen he had met before. She was not distant or untouchable. Her kindness was genuine. And yet there was a part of him that could not shake the feeling that he was caught in something too. Large for him to fully understand, he had to make a choice. But how could he choose when he didn't even know what he was truly feeling? Jason knew one thing for certain. He couldn't ignore the growing feelings inside him. Every time she smiled, or when their eyes met across a room, something inside him stirred. He had never experienced this before, not like this. There was a part of him that wanted to take her hand, to say yes to her offer, to stand by her side as a partner, but there was also fear of the unknown, fear of what it meant for his future. One evening, after a long day of training and preparing for a potential attack, Jason found himself standing alone on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the distant horizon. The stars above were bright and endless, stretching across the sky like a vast ocean of possibility. Jason leaned against the stone railing, taking in the sight. His thoughts were a swirl of confusion and doubt. Was he ready for this? Would he truly accept a life by Shira's side, not as a soldier, but as something more? What would it mean for him to be with her, to be married to a queen, to share in the burdens of her kingdom? "You are troubled," a soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Jason turned to see Shira standing at the entrance to the balcony. Her presence was calming, yet commanding, as always. She was dressed simply this time, without the heavy regalia of her royal attire. She looked ... more human, somehow. It's more real. Just thinking, Jason replied, trying to keep his voice steady. I have a lot on my mind. Shira stepped closer, her eyes searching his face. She was silent for a moment, allowing him the space to gather his thoughts. I can see it in your eyes, she said softly. You are struggling with the decision I have asked of you. I did not intend for this to be a burden, Jason. You saved my life, and in doing so, you gave me more than I could ever repay. But I understand that this is not an easy choice. Jason glanced away, his mind racing. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, he admitted. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be part of your life like this. Shira's expression softened, and she stepped closer to him, her presence a steady anchor in his chaotic thoughts. I never asked you to sacrifice yourself for me, Jason, she said quietly. But you did, and that changes everything. The bond between us is real. And I want you to know that no matter what you decide, I will respect your choice. Jason felt a tightness in his chest at her words. But what if I'm not the right person for you? He asked. What if I can't give you what you need? I'm just a soldier. I'm not a king or a prince. I don't know how to lead a kingdom. Shira smiled gently, her hand brushing against his arm. You are more than a soldier to me, Jason, she said, her voice filled with warmth. You are someone who has shown bravery, compassion, and loyalty. These are the qualities that matter most, not titles or status. In my eyes, you are more than enough. Her words pierced through the storm of Jason's thoughts. He had never thought of himself as more than what he was trained to be, someone who fought, someone who protected. But in that moment, standing there with Shira, he began to realize that there was more to him than that. He had a strength that wasn't just physical. He had the ability to love, to stand beside someone and support them, even in the darkest of times. I don't know what the future holds, Jason said softly, his eyes meeting hers. But maybe ... maybe we can figure it out together. Shira's eyes lit up, a spark of hope flashing in her gaze. Together she echoed as if the word meant everything. That is all I ask. Jason felt a sense of peace settle over him. The fear, the doubt began to fade as he realized that he didn't have to have all the answers. He didn't have to be perfect. He just had to be there for her, for them. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The tension in the palace had never been higher. After weeks of uneasy peace, reports came in that enemy forces were approaching from the north. The news spread quickly through the corridors, and soon the entire palace was on alert. Jason stood in the training grounds, feeling the weight of his sword in his hand. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of something much bigger, something that involved his future, his heart, and now his queen's life. Shira had insisted on remaining by his side despite the increasing danger. She was a leader, not one to hide behind walls or soldiers. Jason had come to respect her strength, but he worried for her safety. As her protector, it was his job to ensure nothing happened to her. And as someone who had begun to care for her deeply, he felt the fear of losing her gnawing at his insides. The enemy, a powerful coalition of rival factions, had always despised the alliance between Shira's people and humanity. They saw it as a threat to their influence in the galaxy. Jason had heard whispers of their plans before, but this time, the threat was real. They weren't just talking anymore. They were coming. Jason walked alongside Shira as they made their way to the command room. She had already been briefed on the enemy's movements. Her face was calm, but there was a sharpness in her eyes, a determination that Jason admired. Do you think they'll attack tonight? Jason asked, his voice steady but tinged with concern. Shira looked at him, her expression unreadable. I don't know, she said softly, but I won't hide. My people need to see me standing with them, fighting for them. I will not let fear control me. Jason nodded, but the truth was, he was afraid. Not for himself, but for her. He had seen what her enemies were capable of. He had heard the stories of their brutality, their willingness to destroy everything in their path to gain control. And now, they were coming for her. As they reached the command room, Jason could feel the tension in the air. The room was filled with military officers, strategists, and soldiers. Everyone was preparing for the worst. Shira moved to the front, her presence instantly commanding the room. "We will defend this kingdom," she said, her voice firm. "No one will break through these walls. Our allies are ready, and we will stand together. We will not fall." Her words brought a sense of hope to the room, but Jason could see the fear in the eyes of some of the soldiers. This was not just a battle for land or power. This was a fight for survival. Everyone knew it. Jason's role was clear. He would protect Shira, and he would fight by her side. The soldiers would need their queen's leadership, but they would also need to see that they weren't alone. Shira was not the kind of queen who would sit on the sidelines. She was in the thick of things, ready to face the dangers with her people. "Jason," Shira said, breaking through his thoughts. She had been speaking to the officers, but now she turned her attention to him. "I want you to lead the defense at the east wall. The enemy is expected to make their move there. I trust you to hold the line." Jason felt a surge of pride. She had confidence in him, and he wouldn't let her down. "I won't fail you, Your Majesty," he replied, his voice steady. Shira smiled, a rare but warm expression that made his heart skip. "I know you won't," she said. "Stay safe, Jason." The weight of her words hung in the air, and Jason gave her a respectful nod before heading out with his squad. The night ahead would be long, but he was determined to keep his promise as the hours passed. Jason and his team took their positions along the east wall. The sky was dark, and the air felt thick with anticipation. The soldiers were ready, their weapons sharp and their minds focused. But despite the preparations, the unease in Jason's chest didn't ease. He couldn't stop thinking about Shira. She was leading the defense from the palace. And although he trusted her abilities, he knew there was always a risk when the enemy was this close. The first signs of the enemy came just before midnight. A line of figures appeared on the horizon, their shapes dark against the starlit sky. Jason's hand tightened around his sword. The battle was about to begin. "Ready yourselves," he shouted to his men. "We fight to protect our home, our queen." The soldiers echoed his words, their voices filled with determination. Jason's heart raced as the enemy drew closer, their numbers much greater than his own. But he wasn't worried about numbers. He was worried about the queen. He had sworn to protect her, and that was exactly what he intended to do. The first wave of attackers hit with brutal force. Jason and his soldiers held their ground, fighting fiercely to repel the enemy. The clash of weapons, the shouts of soldiers, and the sound of battle filled the air. Jason fought with everything he had, his movements sharp and precise. Eyes constantly scanned the horizon, looking for any sign of Shira. Minutes felt like hours, and the fight seemed to drag on endlessly. Jason's strength was waning, but he refused to give in. He knew Shira was relying on him just as much as he was relying on her. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught his eye. There in the distance was the figure of Shira, standing on the palace balcony, her eyes scanning the battlefield. She wasn't hiding. She was watching, leading her people even from a distance. Jason felt a surge of energy at the sight of her. The battle raged on, but Jason's resolve grew stronger. He fought harder, faster, driven by the knowledge that he wasn't just defending a kingdom. He was defending her, the queen, who had given him a chance at something greater than he ever thought possible. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was her protector, her partner. And he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. The enemy forces were relentless, but Jason's soldiers fought with everything they had. As dawn broke, the tide of the battle began to turn. The enemy, worn down and disorganized, started to retreat. Jason and his men held their ground, pushing forward, making sure no one was left behind. When the battle was finally over, the sun was rising, casting a soft light over the battlefield. Jason stood, panting and bloodied, but victorious. He looked up to see Shira standing at the palace balcony once again, her eyes meeting his. She was safe, and in that moment, Jason realized something. Now, no matter the battles they faced, no matter the challenges that lay ahead, they were in this together. He had made a choice, and he would stand by her side through every battle, every victory, and every challenge they faced. The sun had barely risen over the kingdom, casting a soft, golden light across the palace grounds. The battle was over, and victory had been secured. But despite the triumph, Jason felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. The war had not yet ended. There were still many challenges ahead, and the scars of the battle were visible on both the soldiers and the land. Jason stood on the balcony overlooking the aftermath. The battlefield had been cleared, but the memories of the fight still lingered. His men were exhausted, but their spirits were high. They had done what they came to do. They had protected their queen, their home. And yet there was something deeper within Jason that he couldn't shake. It was the quiet understanding that this victory, as important as it was only a step towards something even greater. Beside him stood Queen Shira, her expression calm but worn from the ordeal. She had led her people through the darkest of times, standing side by side with them on the battlefield. Jason couldn't help but admire her strength. Her beauty, her intelligence, her power, they were all qualities that had drawn him to her. But it was her heart that had truly captured him. Shira glanced at him, her eyes softening as she noticed the weariness in his face. "You did well," she said gently. "You and your men fought bravely." Jason nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. "We did what we had to do," he replied. "But there's still much work to be done. The enemy isn't gone for good." Shira placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him a moment of comfort. "I know. But today, we won. And for today, that's enough." Jason turned to face her, his heart beating faster as he took in the sight of her standing there, so close, so strong. He had always known that she was a queen, but in that moment he saw her as something more. She was a partner, a protector, a leader. And in that moment, he realized just how much he cared for her. Shira noticed the change in his gaze, the intensity of his thoughts. She stepped closer to him, her presence a steady force in the storm of emotions that Jason felt. "I know the road ahead won't be easy," she said softly, "but I believe in us. I believe in what we can do together." The words hit Jason like a wave, and he found himself at a loss for words. He had always been a soldier, a man of action, but the weight of what Shira was saying went beyond anything he had ever considered. She wasn't just asking him to stand by her side. She was asking him to join her in something greater, something that could change the fate of their kingdoms, their people. "I don't know what the future holds," Jason said, his voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside him, "but I know I want to be by your side. I've never been sure of much in my life, but with you I'm sure." Shira's eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and joy. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his. "Then let us face the future together, as partners, as allies, something more than just a queen and her soldier." The words hung in the air between them, and Jason felt a deep sense of relief. This wasn't just a political alliance anymore. This was something real, something personal. He had come to this place, this kingdom, as a soldier. But now he realized he had become something more, had become part of her world, and she had become part of his. The bond between them was growing, evolving, and with it, Jason knew they could face whatever challenges the future might hold. Later that evening, the palace held a celebration in honor of their victory. The halls were filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and dancing. It was a moment of joy, a moment of peace after the long battle. Jason stood beside Shira, watching as her people celebrated. They had earned this moment, and they knew it. The queen was the center of attention, as always, but this time, there was something different about the way people looked at her. It was not just admiration for her position or power, it was respect. For her leadership, for her strength, for the way she had led them through the darkness and into the light. Jason felt a swell of pride in his chest as he stood beside her. As the night wore on, Shira leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's more we must do. The enemies will regroup, but we will be ready." Jason nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "We'll be ready. We'll face them together." They stood there, side by side, as the music played and the people danced. In that moment, Jason knew that no matter what came next, they would be able to face it. He had made his choice, and it was the right one. He would stand by Shira's side, not just as her protector, but as her partner in everything. The future was uncertain, but Jason was no longer afraid. With Shira by his side, he knew they could face anything. Together, they would build something stronger than either of them could have imagined. The day of the wedding arrived quietly, with a peaceful air that seemed to calm the entire kingdom. The palace, once filled with tension and the sounds of battle, now echoed with the soft hum of preparation. The sun rose over the horizon, casting a warm golden light across the land, signaling the beginning of something new. Jason stood at the edge of the palace garden, his mind in a whirlwind. The last few days had been a blur. The battle was over, the victory had been won, and now, the moment he had once never imagined was here. He was about to marry Queen Shira. He had agreed to this union, not out of duty, but because of something deeper, something real. His feelings for her had grown stronger with each passing day, and now, standing on the cusp of this new chapter, he realized just how much he had come to care for her. He adjusted his uniform, the weight of the ceremonial armor feeling heavier than it had ever been. His hands shook slightly as he straightened his collar. He wasn't nervous about the ceremony itself. That wasn't what troubled him. It was the weight of the promises that came with the union. He was about to join his life with hers, and with that came not just a bond of love, but a responsibility. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a part of something much larger. He was about to stand by her side, not only as her protector, but as her equal. Jason sighed and looked up at the sky. The stars had faded with the sunrise, but their promise of a new beginning remained in the light of the morning. This was a new chapter for him, for Shira. For the kingdom they would now lead together. The soft sound of footsteps reached his ears, and he turned to see Shira approaching. Her presence was impossible to ignore, as always. A simple but elegant gown, her golden hair cascading down her back in soft waves. She was every bit the queen. Yet in that moment, she seemed just like any other woman, someone he could love, someone he could stand beside. Shira smiled as she saw him, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and calm. "You look handsome," she said, her voice soft, yet filled with warmth. Jason smiled back, his heart beating a little faster as he met her gaze. "I could say the same about you," he replied, his voice steady but with a hint of affection. She reached out and gently took his hand. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice low but full of meaning. Jason nodded, his heart swelling with pride and love. "I'm ready. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Shira's smile grew wider, and for a moment, the weight of the world seemed to lift. This was it. The moment where everything they had fought for, everything they had endured, had brought them to this. It wasn't just about the ceremony. It was about the promise they were making to each other and to their people. They walked together toward the grand hall, where the ceremony would take place. The courtyard was filled with people, their faces full of joy and anticipation. The sound of music filled the air, and the atmosphere was one of celebration. The kingdom had been through so much, and now it seemed there was hope again. A new alliance had been forged, not just between two nations, but between two hearts. As they entered the hall, Jason could feel the eyes of the people on them. The room was decorated with flowers, the colors of the kingdom's flags hanging proudly from the walls. The air was thick with the scent of fresh blooms, and the warmth of the moment filled every corner of the room. Shira walked with grace, her head held high, and Jason followed closely beside her, his hand in hers. The ceremony was simple, but its meaning was profound. Shira spoke her vows first, her voice clear and strong, yet filled with emotion. "I vow to stand by you, Jason," she said, her eyes locked on his. "In times of peace, in times of war, in moments of joy and moments of sorrow, I promise to fight for you, to protect you, and to love you as we build our future together." Jason's heart swelled as he listened to her words. This wasn't just a promise to her people. This was a promise to him, to the man she had come to trust, to the man she had chosen to share her life with. When it was his turn Jason looked into her eyes, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I vow to protect you, Shira, to stand by your side, not just as your soldier, but as your partner. Promise to support you, to face every challenge with you, and to love you no matter what the future holds. I will always be here by your side." Shira's eyes softened, and for a moment the entire room seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, making promises to one another. They were two people, two hearts, choosing each other in a world that often seemed uncertain. The officiant smiled as he pronounced them husband and wife. The crowd erupted into applause, and Jason felt a rush of warmth and joy flood through him. He had never imagined this moment, never thought that he would stand here. But now that it had arrived, he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Shira turned to face him, her eyes bright with happiness. Without a word, she took his hand, and they shared a quiet, tender kiss, sealing the promise they had made. The crowd cheered again, but Jason was lost in the moment, lost in the feeling of having her by his side. As the ceremony ended and the celebrations began, Jason and Shira stood together, hand in hand, facing the future. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, both political and personal. But in that moment, they knew one thing for sure. They were ready to face whatever came next. Together, the sun was setting as the evening wore on. Stars beginning to shine once more. The kingdom, once filled with uncertainty and fear, now felt alive with hope. And Jason, standing beside his queen, knew that this was just the beginning of their journey.